I have 5 bits of outdated driving advice for you today. If you want to be really cheeky, you can have a look at the chapters down below to see a sneak preview of what all the 5 sections might be. But the real ones, we'll watch them as they come. First, we've got to start with warming up the car. You don't need to warm up the car. Warming up the car is quite an old school thing to do. It used to be a big deal when you had carburetted engines and you had a choke and the engines would never quite run right until they were warmed up. Modern engines don't have this problem. Modern engines will adjust the fueling, they'll adjust everything, and as soon as you press the button, you can drive off. It's absolutely no drama. What you need to be careful of is the water temperature and the oil temperature. And until those two are up to temperature, you don't want to be sending the car, getting into boost, using a lot of throttle. The first is down here and is the water temperature or the coolant temperature. That one will come up very quickly. And a lot of people think once that's in the middle, they're safe to beat on the car, but you're not. It's almost at halfway already. I left home about 2 minutes ago. The very important temperature to keep an eye on is the oil temperature. Not a lot of cars will show you oil temperature. Even this car, you have to be in sport mode to see it. But it's this bar here, and it normally sits just over halfway on that gauge. Only when the oil is up to temp are you safe to beat on the car. You can actually see my coolant is now up to temp. It's at halfway, but the oil is nowhere near. So if you don't have an oil temp gauge, wait for your coolant to get warm, drive another 5, 10, 15 minutes, and then you're probably okay to start hammering on the car and using the performance that it has. If this is not your first Mick Drives Cars video, make sure to subscribe and maybe like the video. Don't be like this guy reversing out into me. One thing that's nice to do is to let the cold start come down to idle. You will notice modern cars, when they fire up for the first time, the idle is quite high. And over the next 10 to 30 seconds, depending on the car, the idle will come back down to where it settles, usually just below 1,000 RPM. It's nice for the car if you allow it to get back to settling before you drive off. If you drive off before this idle settles, the engine's going to be a little bit jerky and it's not going to be a smooth pull away. What the engine's actually doing is partially opening the throttle. You just don't have the control you normally might do because you can't close the throttle. But you're absolutely more than fine to drive gently as soon as you press the button or turn the key. Another one that frankly scares me when people say this is that you should not engine brake. The reasons people give to avoid engine braking, they say little lines like brakes are cheaper to replace than a clutch or an engine, and other similar rubbish. Ignore these people. If you engine brake correctly, you're not going to damage anything, and it is the #1 way to get best fuel economy in your car. Engine braking is a game changer. I've seen the red lights up ahead and I've lifted off already. This entire way up to the lights, I have no fuel used. It's for free. And look at that, the lights have gone green. I still haven't touched the brakes and I can keep this 22 miles an hour of momentum, and I only have to accelerate from 20 to 40 rather than from 0 to 40. I cannot overstate what a huge difference this makes to your fuel economy if you use it correctly. That just there was the prime example of why engine braking and simply lifting off the accelerator is the best way to save fuel. If you were to accelerate all the way up to the traffic light and then stop all the way to 0 miles an hour and then accelerate all the way back up to 40 again, it is a waste of fuel. So if you're just trying to drive gently, you're just trying to get to where you're going to, make sure you use engine braking. Feeding the steering wheel. A lot of people want to be ridiculous and say this is the only way you should drive. Again, it comes from an old school point of thinking you should always have 2 hands on the wheel and blah, 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 blah. Ignore this. Don't do this. It's unnecessary. Also, it's just not pleasant or comfortable or gives you the control that you want. Realistically, if you just go hand over hand, it's absolutely fine, and it feels a bit more positive, it feels a bit better, it gives you a bit more control. Look how awkward this shuffling feels. I just want to go hand over hand. It feels so much incredibly more natural to go hand over hand. You have more control. Yes, there are times when only one hand is on the wheel, but in modern cars with quick steering racks, you don't need more than one hand on the wheel. It's so much more comfortable to just go hand over hand. For slow maneuvers, parking maneuvers, all of this type of stuff, it is so much nicer to steer in that way. So much nicer. Guys, don't shuffle the steering wheel. You're not a grandma from the 1980s, okay? Just drive normally. You'll be fine. People that say you shouldn't use cruise control absolutely blow my mind. Cruise control is one of the best additions to cars. Make sure you use cruise control, especially on a motorway. People sometimes say that they themselves can beat the fuel economy that cruise control gives you. If you want to be super neurotic about driving, drive everywhere at 56 miles an hour because that's the perfect sweet spot of where your engine makes the best fuel economy, then you go ahead and do that. For 99.9% of people, cruise control will give you better fuel economy. It will be a little bit less tiring and a little bit easier and a little bit more comfortable, which everyone likes. The people that say you shouldn't use cruise are absolutely insane. I've got a whole video on cruise control. You can click up here to watch it. That will give you a guide on how to use it and the benefits. But the highlights are this. Cruise will make your journey 100 times easier. It will give you more concentration on the things that are important, like what's going on behind me, who's to the side of me, a bit more spatial awareness, because you have one less thing to think about. And that one less thing to think about is that right foot. It makes long journeys easier, it makes everything more comfortable, and it actually makes the whole road system work more efficiently if everybody was to use it. It will get you better fuel economy. I do a lot of motorway driving when I go and see clients and such, and this car is averaging 29.6. That's over the last 9,500 miles at a relatively low average speed. But also that includes a track day, it includes countless hours of spirited driving in a 300 horsepower car, which by all accounts isn't that good on fuel. The reason my average is 30 miles an hour nearabouts is because I just use cruise control every time I'm on a longer journey. Thumbs inside the steering wheel. Apparently this is bad. This comes once again from an old school style of thinking. When cars used to have manual steering, there was a risk that if you're in a crash, because the wheels would suddenly go whoop, the steering wheel could also turn very violently, and you could injure your thumbs as a result if you had your thumbs inside the steering wheel. In a modern car, the only thing that's driving the turning of your steering wheel is usually an electric motor or a hydraulic system. Those systems do not have enough power to break your thumbs. Having your thumbs in the steering wheel gives you a better grip when you're at this 9 and 3 position. If you were to keep your hands outside of the steering wheel, you feel like you have less control. You put them in, suddenly you're more connected to the car. You don't want a super firm grip. If you want more information on how to hold a steering wheel, click this video up here. I've got a whole steering wheel guide. You should have a delicate grip on the steering wheel, but you have to put your thumbs in order to hold it properly. Some people like this 10 and 2 grip, and again, you have to use your thumbs. With a little less traffic, you put your thumbs inside, you wrap your hand around the steering wheel. You just have a lot more control on the wheel. Don't be a yob like I just was in the middle of a town with lots of traffic. But that goes without saying. You're on my channel. That means you are an ethical petrol head. Potentially, you might want to watch this video. It's Pretty good. Promise. Alright. Bye.